right, so we're not gonna do an unboxing or do any of that fancy stuff, man. We're gonna jump straight into it and let's talk about the Fine Woven, the all-new Fine Woven case for the iPhone 15 Pro Max, aka the Fine Woman. That's what I call it because I don't know, the woven just looks like woman. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, you already know what everybody's on the internet talking about this case. Everybody's calling it trash. I don't know if there's one review out there. I don't really look at other people's case reviews, but there isn't really one review out there that is giving this thing any good reviews. And if you're a fan of me, you know me, you know I don't rock with no Apple cases. You know I do not like the leather case. I didn't like the silicone case, although it's probably the better case of them. And the clear case, just not it. So many better options out there. But I had to go out there, and I wasn't even going to mess with this case. But I had to go ahead and get it in so I can just see what everybody is talking about. And let me go ahead and give like a disclaimer. You can't really talk about this case without long term. Everybody's assuming it's not going to last. We already have people calling the case big trash, as if it's not going to last and you haven't even used the case for a week yet. So let's give the case a little bit of time, and that's what I'm going to be doing on this channel, is giving this case some time to see how it is. But as it sits, let's go ahead and discuss it. So the first thing she's going to see is going to get that nice fine woven type of fabric out there. Not fabric, fabric. All right, words T this Monday. Now, when I first saw it, I was like, you know what? Fabric ain't bad, because there are very dope cases out there. I know Google made a fabric case for their Pixel. You have Peak Design. There are some good fabric cases on the market. So when I first saw that, I was like, you know what? That's going to be good. And then when I got it in and I seen everybody else talking about it, I realized that this is going to be a little different. Now, I know everybody is saying that you can scratch it and doing all those things and it's permanent, but I mean, I'll put fingernails on it and the marks, you know, they kind of went away. For the most part, I'm just intentionally doing that. And I think over time, all of those marks will eventually go away. Now, I'm not sure about you, man, but you have a case. You use a case for what it is. You use your case so your phone doesn't get scratched up. But now these days, we're complaining about scratches on the actual case. How in the hell do you want to use your phone? You see what I'm saying? So over time, we'll see if these scratches will eventually go away. But just looking at the actual case itself, they have Magsafe built in. And actually, I'm here to say that the Magsafe is actually improved. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit on this review. Different than what I would normally do when it comes to these cases. But if you know anything about my channel, if it picks up this heavy block right here, you already know that this is going to be a decent case. That means you got some strong Magsafe magnets. And this is the first Apple case that ever, you know, sort of wants to lift this up. Now, it isn't super confident. It's just barely holding on. I'm not going to go too high. As you can see, it slaps on the table, and I don't want to damage my table. But this magnet is pretty impressive on this fine woven case. And I thought this woven material will have a little bit of effect on the magnet, and it actually doesn't. So that's good to see that the actual magnet is strong in the case, and the buttons are absolute perfection. I mean, the buttons, any buttons on any Apple cases is going to be perfect. Volume up and down, they definitely have a button for the actual, I want to say mute toggle switch, for the action button. We got to get used to that because all these years doing case reviews was always a mute toggle switch and the power button. But one thing about the sides, where everybody says this case feels cheap, is the sides of this case. It feels so cheap, all right? I'm not even gonna lie. Now, that does feel cheap as hell when you're actually holding on to the sides. The sides are very thin, which actually makes this case a very thin case. I feel like this is probably one more of the thinner cases that Apple probably has ever came out with, but it does feel a little bit cheap, especially when you actually have the case just by itself. You know what I mean? Let me pull this out. And then when you just have this case by itself, the corners kind of feel like they could be leather. It doesn't feel like silicone. It doesn't feel like anything like that. It definitely feels like it could be like a leather-ish material. And then when it's popped on, you can kind of hear the creaking, and you still, sometimes I feel like it just creaks a little bit when you're taking it off. It gives it a little slight, it's trying to listen to me. It gives like a little, I don't know, the sides just don't feel that good. I feel like sometimes when I press it, the case actually seems like it's like trying to snug up on the phone itself. I don't know, it's something about it. It just feels very cheap in my opinion. But overall, when the phone is actually in the case, it's a very nice, tight fitting case. I mean, the case isn't gonna pop out unless you wanna get it out. The sides are very firm. It's very rigid along the sides, so it doesn't give you any cheap feeling, which I would expect that from an Apple case. But there is just something about it that just feels a little cheap about the case. Way cheaper than the silicone case, definitely way cheaper than that leather case. it just feels like they're charging the same amount and just skimping a little bit out on the actual materials themselves. And of course, it has all of the proper cutouts. You see that Type C port down there. You see your speaker cutouts. Everything is good, and it feels so good in your hands. That's the one thing that I really, really love about it. Since using this, it feels so good when you're actually holding it that I have no issues with that. But there's just something about it that's giving me a cheap feeling somewhere down the road. So right now, you may ask me, T, can you really recommend this case? You know what? I don't know yet. This is a case that's going to have to be proven over time to see how this material develops. I think a lot of people are really overreacting and just assuming that this material will be terrible, but we don't know if it's going to be terrible or not. So I plan to use this case as a daily, and maybe next week I'll bring you guys a video saying, look, a week later, how's the case looking? You might get a 2 weeks later. We're going to treat this case like a phone review because that's all we got on this channel was cases. So we're gonna speak of this thing 1 week later, 2 weeks later, a month later. I'm actually gonna try to use this for as long as I can until I get frustrated with it. So I'm not gonna jump out there like the trend has been to just say this case is terrible. I really feel like you gotta give this case a chance. It's a new case. So you have to give it a chance. We automatically can't just dismiss it, although Apple cases historically has been a little bit of trash. I feel like this one we're gonna have to just give it a little bit of time and see how it does. Now, one thing I like about it as I grab it over here, like I said, this case review is a little bit unorthodox. We're kind of skipping around a little bit, and I'm just kind of giving you my true thoughts about it. We're having a really casual conversation about this case. This case is super, super light. Well, actually, my units is all off. I was actually measuring something else. Don't be thinking that I'm measuring that type of stuff, man. Let's just go over to grams, all right? Let's zero it out. I'm measuring packages that I'm about to ship out. But if you just put this on the scale, 29 grams, that's actually really light for a case, and especially for an Apple case. So I'm not dismissing this case right now, but I will say this is a case that you have to keep your eye on and let's pay attention to it to see how it performs over time, and that's exactly what's going to happen on the channel. So make sure you hit that sub. Not only will you get some updates about these cases, but I got a whole floor full of cases. If you're new to the channel, if you just grabbed your iPhone 15 Pro Max, then lock it in because we go heavy when we are talking about accessories. But the fine woven case, the fine aka fine woman, not going to discredit it right now. I feel like we need a little bit more time with it right now. I'm very 50-50 about it.